As a kid growing up in Lagos, my mom would always take me and my older siblings with her to the market, specifically the big markets. Now, one thing was similar with most of the male-owned shops we went in, and that was there were always so many eager young boys just wanting to sell their product, and an older man who just sat and observed. And they always spoke a particular language which I would come to understand as Igbo as I grew older. And even then, I always told myself, there are quite many. Some would even play with me and even compliment my mom. But how are you, handsome, eloquent man, I hear you say? What does this little story of yours have to do with this movie review? Well, my deceptively accurate viewers, this little story of mine has everything to do with the movie. You see, AFAMEFUNA is a movie about the Igbo apprenticeship program, where scores of young men have been taught professional trade and have become successful businessmen over the years. It is a story about the grit, determination, resilience, and hunger for success of the Igbo people. For some people, dropping out of school due to lack of finance or death of the father may spell doom for the family. But for an Igbo man, he sees it as a route to another form of success, as he could go learn trade, and after a few years, he'll get his own funds to start his business. So without wasting yours and my time, let's get into the plot. The movie kicks off with AFAMEFUNA, AFAM for short, celebrating his father's remembrance. But that's quickly interrupted when Segun Arinze arrests him and takes him to the station for interrogation, because they, the police, believe he killed or had a hand in the death of his friend Paul. And so we go into a run-of-the-mill flashback of Afam's life when he was still a young man. His mom had brought him to Lagos to learn trade because his father's dead and they can no longer afford tuition. His boss is played by the ever-brilliant Kanayo. So he gives him a few rules, and right there we are introduced to a younger Paul, a smart, intuitive playboy archetype who knows his way around the market, can woo customers, and has a way of getting what he wants. So he takes Afam under his wings, teaching him all he knows, and soon they become almost like brothers. We get a huge time jump. Paul and Afam are adults. Afam loves his boss's daughter Odogo, but her heart's been taken by none other than Paul, who convinces her to steal her father's money and bring it to him. Really shady guy, that Paul. Now, everything is fine with their business until it isn't. Customs have seized their goods and require a shit ton of money to get it back. And this puts their business at risk and the boss in a conundrum. Afam goes to speak to the custom officers and agrees to clear the goods for a very small amount of money. Wait, what? Well, I guess that is something you can totally do now. I'm not going to shit on this movie that much because I quite like it. So the boss is happy with him and settles him. This clearly angers Paul, who feels he should be settled first because he's been with him the longest. And so, distraught and angry, Paul goes off and joins the wrong crowd. Afam marries his long-time love interest, Odogu's daughter. Well, until Paul comes back, accuses him of stealing his life, his woman, and now his kid. Then blackmails him into giving his debtors money, which Afam does for a while, then stops because he's tired of Paul's constant shithousery. And so Paul is killed because he can't pay back the money he owes, and Afam is discharged because he's innocent. And he confronts his wife, telling her that he knows the kid isn't his, but he loves her nonetheless. And the film ends. You know, I've got a few things to say about this movie. Some are good and some not so much. This movie is well written, competently directed, very well played by a cast of old and young actors. Kanayo as Odogo is more of a mentor character in this movie, but you can definitely tell his mere presence elevated the movie. And it's so weird just seeing him in a movie that doesn't involve rituals and sacrifices. The thing I didn't like, however, is the portrayal of the Hausa man in this movie. Segun Arinze, an Igbo man, naturally, plays a northerner in this movie with a phony accent. Why do they always feel the need to give a northerner that lousy accent? An educated man, for that matter. Segun Arinze is not a Hausa man and can speak English without an accent. Why they felt the need to give him that accent is something I'll never understand. It's almost like they're hell-bent on letting people know northerners aren't fluent in English. And there is a particular scene with a Hausa man, and a younger Paul at the market, I reckon the Northerners won't be too happy with their portrayal in this movie. Another thing is Odogu's kid. I don't even remember her name because she's less of a person and more of an object that people fight over. She has no personality, ambition. She just goes wherever the script wants her to. Now, this is me being super critical of this movie, but I think this movie comes off as preachy. The scene where Odogu tells a young Afam about the plight and misfortune of the Igbo people during the war and how, against all the odds, they've come back stronger is supposed to be really inspirational and heart-wrenching. And it was until the pity party mechanism kicked in. He spoke at length of how their businesses suffered and crumbled. Mate, so did every business owned by every ethnic group in Nigeria during the war. He spoke about their plight. Yeah, Nigerians in and around the war zone suffered too. He spoke about how Igbos don't steal and how they're the most successful tribe, a narrative that this movie tries to push throughout the entirety of its runtime. All of this message can become jarring to neutrals who just want a good movie about strife, adversity, and at the end, success, and not get bogged down by themes and silent political messages being shoehorned into it. And is it just me, or does this movie follow the generic trope of most Nollywood films where a young man is given a moderate sum of money and years later he's a millionaire? As in Afam's case, he was given 6 million to start his business, and a few years later he's super successful, owning cars and houses and even paying debtors 5 million naira every month. No, businesses do not work like that. Overall, I'd say this is a good movie that does well to pass the message it wants to disseminate, but lacks in its ability to find that balance between being a great movie and a movie about their message. But if at all anything, whenever I look at an Igbo man's apprentice, all I see is the zeal, determination, and grit in their eyes. And perhaps it's why they're willing to go above and beyond to attain success.